So we want to solve the equation cosecant x equals 7/3, and since we don't have an inverse cosecant button on the calculator, we're going to take reciprocals of both sides of this equation. And the reciprocal of cosecant x is sine x, and the reciprocal of 7/3 is 3/7. So taking the inverse sine of both sides of that equation, we would have x equals sine inverse of 3/7. So we're going to think about on a circle, if we looked at inverse sine, we are going to get answers back from negative pi halves to pi halves, and since this is positive, we're going to get an angle in quadrant 1. So we're going to grab the calculator and we're going to do inverse sine of 3 divided by 7. And we'll round that to 4 decimal places. It looks like 0.4429. So our first solution is x equal 0.4429. But then we need to ask ourselves, where else on this circle would I have a sine value of 3/7? At what angle? Well, it needs to be positive, so we know that's going to be something in quadrant 2. So thinking of how I would get that angle in quadrant 2, well, this first angle here is 0.4429. If I went to pi and I subtracted off that angle, this angle right here is the same size. So my second answer is going to be pi minus this angle. And it's best to use the value in your calculator that's not rounded and only round at the end. So I'm going to take the calculator and I'm going to do pi minus, and I'm going to pull up that answer, and I'm going to get 2.6987. So my second solution, x equal 2.6987. So here are my two solutions to, if I took the sine of those angles, I would get 3/7, and if I took the cosecant of those angles, I would get 7/3. Now we're going to consider that same equation, but what if it would have had a negative on the 7/3? Well, I am still going to take the reciprocals of both sides in the inverse sine, so I'm still going to be working on inverse sine, but instead of 3/7, it's going to be negative 3/7. And I'm still going to think about on the unit circle, the inverse sine is going to give me answers from negative pi halves to pi halves, but this time, because the sine value is negative, I know I'm in quadrant 4. So let's go ahead and take the calculator, and we know that we're going to get a negative angle out that's going to be the same size as that one was where we went in the positive direction. So let's go ahead and do that. Inverse sine of negative 3 divided by 7. And we do indeed get that negative of that other angle there, but that's not going to be a solution because we want solutions on the interval from 0 to 2 pi. That was a negative answer, but we know we could get a coterminal angle that is between 0 and 2 pi by adding a loop around, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take that answer and add 2 pi to it. And that gives me one of my solutions, which is x equals 5.8403. So x equals 5.8403. Now I ask myself, where else is there an angle that would have the same sine value and that was negative, and the sine is negative also in quadrant 3, so it's going to be there in quadrant 3. Now I knew this angle's size is 0.4429, and so if I took pi and then I added to it this angle, I would have the angle I need between 0 and 2 pi for that second solution. So I'm going to take the calculator, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do inverse sine of negative 3 divided by 7, and that gave me that angle, and it's negative, so I want to add that angle, so I'm going to take pi, subtract that answer, because subtract a negative and negative make a positive, so it'll end up adding that angle, and it looks like the second solution I get is 3.5845. So my second solution, x equal 3.5845. 3.5. So there are my two angles that solve this equation, but the thing I need to remember is the computer will usually ask you for the smaller angle first. So make sure you enter this 3.5845, and then for the larger angle you enter the 5.8403.